Good evening and welcome to NTD UK News. I'm Stuart Leeson here, today's top stories. The UK has banned Belarus's national carrier from its airspace following the forced landing of a Ryanair passenger jet at the weekend. The government has advised people not to travel into and out of 8 Indian variant hotspots. And the government is bringing forward plans to review the BBC's governance in the wake of the Panorama interview scandal. The UK has said it will ban Belarus Airlines from its airspace, and EU leaders agreed on new sanctions on the country. This comes amid fury over the forced diversion of a passenger jet to arrest an opposition journalist.
The UK has banned Belarus' national carrier from its airspace. This after Belarus authorities forced a passenger plane to land in an incident denounced by the EU as state hijacking. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab made that announcement on Monday in Parliament. When asked by an SNP lawmaker about possible Russian involvement in the incident, he responded,
"But as he says, it's very difficult to believe that this kind of action could have been taken without at least the acquiescence of the authorities in Moscow. But as I say, it is unclear as yet."
He called the incident a shocking assault on civil aviation. Raab added that Britain is requesting British Airlines cease flights over Belarus. Belarusian authorities on Sunday scrambled a fighter jet and forced a Ryanair plane to land in Minsk. Belarus says it acted in response to a bomb threat on the flight, which turned out to be a false alarm. They then detained a dissident journalist who was on board. Roman Protasevich on Monday appeared in a video acknowledging having played a role in organising mass disturbances in Minsk last year. His father said he believes his son was forced to admit guilt.
I think he was forced. It's not his words. It's not his intonation of speech. He's acting very reserved, and you can see he is nervous. It is very likely that his nose is broken.
Russia, which provides security, diplomatic and financial backing to Belarus, dismisses any involvement. EU leaders on Monday agreed to impose more sanctions on Belarus, including economic ones, and they called on their airlines to avoid the former Soviet Union republic's airspace.
And Belarus used its control over its airspace in order to perpetrate a state hijacking. Therefore, the safety and security of flights through Belarus airspace can no longer be trusted.
The EU has a travel ban and an asset freeze in place on 88 Belarusians, including Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko, and 7 companies. It's over Minsk's crackdown on protests following a contested presidential election last year. Human rights groups say about 35,000 people have been detained in Belarus since August over the protests. EU leaders demand an immediate release of the journalist.
The government has issued guidance to limit movement in and out of UK hotspots for the India variant. Critics are calling it a local lockdown by stealth. NTD's Neil Woodrow has the details.
The government is having to defend its decision to basically apply a type of local lockdown for those highlighted as COVID B1617.2 variant hotspots without a formal announcement. John Ashworth, the Shadow Health Secretary, raised an urgent question in the Commons. The government's coronavirus webpage lists the 8 places where the Indian variant is spreading fastest. Apart from the regular measures, there is also a line saying, avoid travelling in and out of affected areas unless it is essential. For example, for work, if you cannot work from home, or education. The change to the guidance, which is not law, appears to have been made on Friday without an official announcement, prompting criticism from MPs. Today in the Commons, Vaccines Minister Nadhim Zahawi confirmed the guidance and highlighted the trust the government is putting in the people.
As the Prime Minister said, Mr. Speaker, we want the whole country to move out of these restrictions together, and we're trusting people to be responsible and to act with caution and common sense, as they have done throughout this pandemic and to make decisions about how best to protect themselves and their loved ones, informed by the risks.
In response, the Shadow Health Secretary raised how places such as Bolton have had to bear the brunt of the previous lockdowns, feeling abandoned and without adequate financial support.
So can the Minister understand how upsetting it is? Can he understand how insulting it is to have new restrictions imposed upon us, local lockdowns by stealth, by the back door, and the Secretary of State doesn't even have the courtesy to come and tell us?
He went on to ask why there was no communication on this.
Why were local directors of public health and local authority leaders not consulted? Why weren't MPs informed? And what does it now mean for our constituents?
Ashworth asked the Minister about those that have made plans to travel to see family or booked breaks who may now be affected. The Minister's reply to him was to take the politics out and work together to impress on constituents that it's a time to be vigilant and careful. Despite the hotspots, data from May 24th shows there's been a decrease of 47% in deaths within 28 days of a positive coronavirus test compared to the previous 7 days. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Westminster, London.
The Culture Minister is bringing forward plans to review BBC governance in the wake of the Panorama interview scandal. But he says there are no plans to dismantle the corporation.
Culture Minister John Whittingdale said the reputation of the BBC has been badly tarnished by the Panorama interview scandal. But there are no plans to dismantle or defund the national broadcaster. Whittingdale told MPs that Lord Dyson's report about journalist Martin Bashir's 1995 interview of Princess Diana was shocking.
It details not just an appalling failure to uphold basic journalistic standards, but also an unwillingness to investigate complaints and to discover the truth. That these failures occurred at our national broadcaster is an even greater source of shame.
The government made fundamental governance changes to the BBC's charter 5 years ago. Whittingdale said the government hopes the failures identified in Dyson's report could not happen with the updated governance in place. The effectiveness of those changes was due to be reviewed next year, but the Culture Minister said the review will start now.
It is not for the government to interfere in editorial decisions, but it is the job of government to ensure that there is a strong and robust system of governance at the BBC with effective external oversight.
On Monday, the BBC board issued a statement saying it is concerned by the findings in the report. The board accepted the findings in full and reiterated its apology. The board said the BBC is a different organisation now, with different and stronger governance as well as improved processes. BBC Chairman Richard Sharp also confirmed they will investigate why Martin Bashir was rehired in 2016.
Despite the presence of thousands of UN peacekeepers and French troops, the ISIS terrorist group and Al-Qaeda continue to fuel a security crisis in Mali and the wider Sahel. Recent training by the European Union hopes to give Mali's military the upper hand.
In conflict-hit central Mali, a soldier pulls the firing lanyard on a howitzer. But no round shoots to the horizon. This is a training session aimed at giving Mali's military the upper hand in its years-long fight against rebels. It's been organised by the European Union's training mission in Mali, or EUTM, and led for the past 9 weeks by Captain de la Peña.
We train them in direct fires because in that way we give them the opportunity to support the infantry units at longer distance, and at the same time they don't have to be exposed to the enemy. So we are given the possibility to use the howitzer in the maximum capabilities.
The EU has provided training in intelligence, driving, explosives detection and artillery to nearly 14,000 Malian soldiers since 2012. But despite the presence of 13,000 UN peacekeepers and 5,100 French troops, militants have rebounded, fueling a security crisis in Mali and across the wider Sahel region. Deadly attacks increased eightfold between 2015 and 2020, and over 5 million people have been displaced. Parts of northern and central Mali are ungovernable. More than 70 Malian soldiers have been killed this year alone. Colonel Traoré, who heads Mali's 6th military area, says the relationship between the EU and Mali is an exchange of knowledge.
Armies are neighbours. Armies are complementary. I understand that EUTM is there to complement our knowledge and our efforts. The war we are waging is global. It's the war against terrorism. It's not just at home.
On the final day of exercises, the soldiers of the 614th Artillery Battalion seemed confident and relaxed. But Colonel Traoré has a warning. With training now drawing to a close, it's time to ready themselves for the battlefield.
The impact of Brexit on trade has been laid bare by official figures which show that UK trading goods with EU countries has plunged by nearly a quarter. Total trading goods with EU countries fell by over 23% in the first quarter of 2021, compared with the same period 3 years ago. Since the Brexit transition period ended at the year end, businesses have been hit by increasing red tape and delays at ports. The Office for National Statistics says it's too early to know if this is a result of short-term disruption or long-term adjustments to the supply chain. Recent data shows that UK-EU trade is picking up. Exports to the EU climbed by nearly 9% between February and March, whilst imports from the EU rose by 4.5%. And in other news, the energy regulator Ofgem plans to invest £300 million in low-carbon projects. That will include support for several thousand electric vehicle charging points. NTD's Patrick Hayden takes a look.
The UK energy regulator is investing £300 million in low-carbon projects. It includes projects to build more than 3,500 charging points for electric vehicles. Ofgem says the charging points will be installed across the UK's motorways. It says the lack of charging points near homes is putting people off buying an electric car. That's known as range anxiety. Funding will go to supporting 1,800 new ultra-rapid charging points on motorways. Currently, there are only just over 900 of these points. Cities and train stations will also see their networks increase. Ofgem says a massive upgrade to Britain's infrastructure is needed to support new demand for electricity. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
Forecasts by the Visit Britain agency show domestic tourism is set for a slow recovery from the pandemic. Holidaymaker spending this year is expected to be only half the 2019 level.
The UK's National Tourism Agency, Visit Britain, forecast domestic tourism spending will be worth £51 billion in 2021. This would be a 51% increase on the 2020 figures, but it will be only 56% of the 2019 pre-pandemic levels. Visit Britain says the number is less than their previous forecast at the end of 2020. It also forecasts domestic overnight tourism spending will be worth £13.5 billion. This is a 40% rise from the 2020 spending, but only 55% of the 2019 level. Spending on day trips is forecast to be nearly £39 billion, 58% of the 2019 level. For inbound tourism this year, the forecast is even gloomier. Visit Britain says it will be over 11 million, up 10% on 2020, but only 28% of the 2019 level. It forecasts tourist spending will be over £6 billion, less than a quarter of the 2019 level.
Community Secretary Robert Jenrick and Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden are urging all UK councils to allow weekly parkrun events to resume. In their letters, they pointed out that physical activity is vital to the public's mental health. The local fun runs have not yet restarted. That's despite organised outdoor sports resuming since late March. without a cap on numbers. Event organisers Parkrun have delayed the scheme's reopening until late June, both in England and Northern Ireland. They say it's due to a lack of permissions from local councils. 250 locations in England have given permission to run on June the 5th, but Parkrun says it's not enough to prevent overcrowding. Now, what does ballet point shoemaking and glass eye making have in common? They're both among the 20 critically endangered traditional crafts that could disappear from the UK in a generation.
Around 10 years ago, craftspeople and supporters of crafts in the UK set up the Heritage Crafts Association as a charity.
When we were set up in 2019, one of the things that we were so concerned about was to make sure that heritage craft skills are passed on. They have been passed on through and down the generations to us, and we are, our generation, the guardians of these craft skills.
The Red List of Endangered Crafts was first published in 2017 as one of the association's tools to help develop funding and policies. The list also highlights traditional crafts practiced in the UK. Hat making is one of the newly endangered crafts included on this year's list, but have you heard of bowed felt hats? Rachel Frost makes these hats and uses a 7-foot-long bow to prepare the fibres for felting.
There's a gut string stretched along its length that, when plucked with a wooden pin, vibrates, and the vibration picks up the fibres and sends them flying magically across the table to land in a pile on the other end of the table.
Diamond cutting is also critically endangered. There are now less than 10 skilled diamond cutters in the UK, largely due to competition from overseas. Kilt making also joined the list. Makers of hand-sewn kilts are particularly hard hit from companies making machine-made kilts, but hand-sewn kilt makers are working together at the Kilt Makery in Edinburgh for overseas clients.
We've got like a very large order from Florida for a huge band, and they're really interested in explaining the story to their students and the kids in the band. So, you know, we're able to actually do 200 hand-sewn kilts.
Some of these crafts are endangered for a few common reasons. For example, skilled makers approaching retirement have few interested in learning their craft, or the maker has little time or funding to pass on the skills to an apprentice. The association noted that while the lockdown was incredibly stressful for the heritage crafts, the industry saw some innovation with online marketing and training.
Still to come, so Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic has conducted a successful spaceflight. It's now one step closer to flying paying customers into outer space. Find out more after the break.